Welcome to the Volunteer and Combination Officer Section weekly webinar series. We're certainly glad that you all have joined us. We have about 45 people online. We had about 118 registered. So we encourage everybody who either watches it live or registered, it will be recorded so you can see it later or use it in officers' meetings. These are great, short, little training sessions that you can use in officers' meetings if you so desire. My name is John Buckman, and I'm going to be the host for today's presentation. But the reality is that I'm just going to sit here and absorb the information that our speaker is going to share with you. So a couple little housekeeping things. The audio is being broadcast over voice over IP technology. If you experience technical difficulties, go to webinars@ifc.org or go to the chat function and we'll try to help you out. Spencer has developed some chat or a couple question and answers, the handouts, that sort of thing. Will be online. If you've been with us before, you know how to get that, but it will show that. But we want to know who's online. We want to have some chat questions, and we want questions and answers at the end of the presentation. So please don't be bashful about it. What does the VCOS do? The VCOS is this year is 30 years old. We formed in 1994. Our biggest thing that we do each year is Symposium in the Sun. That is in November at Clearwater Beach at the Hilton Resort. We encourage you to register and attend the Symposium in the Sun, but do it quickly because we have filled up for the last 8 years. And once we're full, we're full. So what else does the VCOS do? We monitor legislation, FLSA, we're doing Officers Academy, we're doing some workshops, some mentoring. If you have a question about something that you'd like some help with, maybe just somebody to talk to from another fire department, then we encourage you to reach out to us and we will try to find somebody who can help you. The webinar series we talked about, we do our ribbon reports. If you are into canines, support animals, download our Amber Ribbon Report. If you're a member or not a member, you have access to all of these programs. And so we've developed quite an array of ribbon reports. The data report, which is supposed to be coming out in early 2024, is probably going to be delayed till mid-2024 now because of something Dr. Lori Moore Merrill, the United States Fire Administrator, is doing, that we don't want to put something out and then 30 days later our document be outdated. So that may be delayed a little bit. But that report is designed to help small fire departments collect the data and how to use that data. So that's some of the things the VCOS does. Upcoming programs, upcoming seminars, that sort of thing. Webinars, again, you can download this, look at that, go to our webinar internet address, and you can have access to that. So our presenter today is Chief Spencer Cheatham from the West Point Volunteer Fire Department. I have known Spencer for only 5 years. And I say it that way because I will tell you in the last 5 years, he was working for the International Association of Fire Chiefs, and at that time was called Volunteer Workforce Solutions. And he helped develop many of the academy courses that Volunteer Workforce Solutions has online now, free of charge. But what he also did was he went out around this country and talked to volunteer fire departments about recruitment and retention. He is a wealth of knowledge. And I am so excited that he agreed to do this presentation today for us on your membership cannot meet the call volume requirements. What are you going to do? Chief, it's all yours.
Thank you, Chief Buckman. I appreciate you thinking of me for this topic, and welcome to everybody out there. We've got, this is a tough topic, and we're going to jump into it. Chief kind of hit on who I am. I'm the fire chief of a small town in Virginia. We have the town locality, and then we have a rural section that we cover as well. Actually, this coming up next month will be my 29th year with this department. Also served in a career department for a while, and as Chief said, I worked for the International Association of Fire Chiefs in their volunteer workforce solutions. I recently had the honor of being elected as a board member for VCOS. So I look forward to serving you in that position and really help strengthen volunteer and combination departments. So let's jump right into this topic, right? So we're really here to talk about what to do when your membership can't meet your call volume requirements. And so the obvious issue we're having when we have a low number of trained volunteers basically boils down to a problem statement of less people to do the work, right? But this issue goes much deeper than less people to do the work. I want you to think about your department and see if this rings true. There's basically 3 different types of personnel when we look at meeting standards or meeting the minimum requirements. There's people that don't meet the minimum requirements. And so whether it's percentage of calls, number of shifts, amount of training, whatever that is, whatever your department finds it, there are people that will meet the minimum requirements. They'll do just that, and they'll do little to nothing more. And when we take these 2 classes of memberships, we look at them and and I don't want to generalize, but there's usually they can take the department or leave it. They have other things in their life that are priorities that supersede the fire department. They might want to be there and they want to do what they can when they can, but there's lots of other priorities they have. When they leave the department, they'll usually fade away. They won't show up for a while. You'll contact them. They might come back for a little while, but that won't usually last long. They're not going to throw a fit and come in and bring their gear and pile it in the middle of the floor and leave a nasty note, right? The third type of personnel is really what I would call the core. These personnel do the minimum, but they do so much more as well. They feel a duty to the department. Sometimes they feel as if the department might not be able to operate without them. They may complain, they may cause trouble. Usually that's because they're very passionate about the department, but they'll weather almost any storm to stay a member of the department. I basically, because I feel like this myself, right? The fire department is their crack. It's their heroin. It's their addiction. They need the fire department, but let's be clear, there's a limit to the amount that they need the fire department. And unlike the other types of members, they will, when they leave, they will not fade slow. It'll come all at once because they've probably talked themselves out of quitting several times. They've had that conversation internally or with their family or whatever that is. And then some proverbial straw has come along and has broke the camel's back. And so when they leave, they're going to be mad. They've had this thing that has become part of them, not just part of them, but defines who they are, taken away from them. And they truly feel that way. And so it's going to be dramatic. It's going to be passionate when they leave. Oftentimes, it can be openly negative towards the department or to others in the community, towards others in the community or on social media or things like that. And so when we look at running our volunteer fire department, I hope this rings true for many of y'all. And when we talk about those things in your question and interaction session, I hope that rings true. We as leaders in our department have to concentrate on this core. We have to make sure that their needs are met, as long as we ensure that the values of the department are still there, as long as we ensure that, and I apologize, I've gotten on talking and I haven't been showing my slides here, but yeah, we need to make sure that the core are taken care of. You need to put forth the most of your time, most of your leadership hand-holding and efforts into keeping them. It's not to say you don't that you ignore the other 2 types of members, because they certainly bring value to the department in their own way. And you actually want to concentrate some of your time into moving them from those classes of membership into the core. But really, most of your time needs to be spent with the core and making sure that they stay motivated. So let's talk about the reality of recruitment and retention, right? This is an ebb and flow. We all realize this. Our departments will have times where we can bring in people and retain people, and we'll be able to meet our call volume and things will be going well, and it'll be sunny and rosy and everything looks great. But sometimes we won't have enough, right? That's just the reality. And so when those times occur, the core is who really steps in and picks up the slack. We've known that this ebb and flow occurs for years. There are probably still departments in this country. I know there are still departments that have a waiting list to get in, but that's not the norm. That was the norm for a majority of departments, probably in the 70s, maybe even into the 80s, but it's been decades since this is the norm. Okay. So we need to understand that, and we need to know that as leaders in our department, we have to be able to operate when we're in that low trough of recruitment and retention, and we're on that high peak of recruitment and retention. And so that's a key part of that, and the core is really a key part in doing this. So let's talk about some of the tactics used to keep your department successful when the membership is low. We're going to talk about that, but I also want to talk about the main pitfall of low membership, and that's something I call the department death spiral. I think the best way to illustrate this is to basically give you an example of what that looks like. So we're going to take what I'll call the sample volunteer fire department. Those have been to the recruitment and retention coordinator class. You've heard of the sample volunteer fire department, but let's say the sample volunteer fire department is a low point membership, right? They're still meeting their standards. They still hold training. They aren't missing calls. They're still on fundraising, all of those administrative duties that we all have as leaders in our departments. And how are they doing that, right? Even though their membership is low, they're doing it because their core are picking up the slack. They're compensating for for the lack of members who are there in numbers. So what does that look like? So the core answer more calls than usual. The core at all the fundraisers, they arrive before they start, they set things up, and then they're the last to leave. They are the same way with training. They probably deliver the training. They are the people who, even though they were on the fire last night, they're still getting up today because the paperwork needs to be done to get the taxes off, or some report needs to be sent for some administrative body. They perform all of those behind the scenes duties, as well as the duties associated with responding calls. And so on an individual basis, let's dig a little deeper. So the sample volunteer fire department has a member named Mark, and Mark is a member of the core, right? And so when Mark is good, when membership is good, Mark is able to say, you know what, unless there's a structure fire tonight or a trap or a serious incident, I'm going to spend tonight at home with my family because I know we have plenty of help. But when membership is low, Mark is the type of person who says and thinks, you know what, if I don't respond, if I don't come out, we're going to have to call mutual aid. And there's no way on my watch we're going to scratch a call, right? So that's sort of the mindset of Mark. And that's a huge value to our department. Having somebody at that level with that amount of dedication is huge. And really, if you have a good core, you have multiple people with that type of mindset. But let's talk about when this department death spiral starts. So what I mean by that specifically was Mark's family has exceeded their bandwidth for allowing him to leave, right? They understand and support him going out when the need is truly there. But they are having a hard time understanding when it's not. They don't even mind him being gone, 2 nights a week. They expect him to probably be gone at least 1 night a week and maybe a weekend day. There's a certain expectation, and they can live with that. They have the bandwidth to support Mark and to support him doing that because they know how important it is, and they know how important it is to the community. They also know that Mark as a firefighter is, again, not just a part of him, it's who he is. It's part of his identity, right? Being a firefighter is so much of who we are that it's that important to us. So in addition to the nights that he has to go out and answer calls, or the shifts he's on duty, or whatever that is, he's probably got some non-operational duties as well. So Mark, maybe he works on the apparatus, or he fixes things around the station, or even he's in charge of the quarterly Brunswick Stew fundraiser or spaghetti dinner, whatever that is. So what's Mark hearing at home? So Mark is at home and he hears, honey, you've been on calls 3 nights this week. You're going to be at the station all day and most of the night Friday cooking Brunswick stew. I've been here taking care of the kids. And I feel like as if they don't see you. Heck, even Mark Jr. said the other day, I bet Daddy won't make the ball game because Saturday he'll be on a call. This is what Mark is hearing at home when the membership is low. Eventually, that's going to turn into something more serious. Eventually, it's going to turn into something along the lines of, honey, I love you, but I can't go on like this. It's either the fire department or this family. And I don't know about you, but I don't want a member who chooses the fire department over their family. Their values do not match the values of their department, and they've got their values mixed up. We don't want that. We appreciate the time they're going to give, and we will take that up, but we don't want that to happen, right? And that, because that's just wrong. We've got our values mixed up if we truly put people in that position. So what happens? Mark is going to quit, right? He's going to give up the department before he gives up his family. So Mark was part of the core. All of that weight that Mark was carrying now is distributed to the other members of the core. And now they are in the same position that Mark's in. They have to pick up the duties which Mark had, and they'll get to a point where they don't have the bandwidth, and their family doesn't have the bandwidth to do what the department is asking them to do, and they're going to quit. And so you have this succession cascading symptom of people members who are strong members. They're your core of quitting and leaving the department. And so what does that mean? Well, now your community is dramatically affected, right? Calls are missed. The bills are not paid. Training doesn't take place. The standards and the expectations that your department has, you can't meet them. And so when we look at that also from now, we want to recruit more people. You have to think about this. How difficult is it to recruit more people when the department has a poor reputation? When you're known for missing calls, when you're known for not following through on things, or not having the ability to do things. And then let's say we bring in people and they're excited to be a part of this organization. We don't have the bandwidth to now train them and give them the time that they need to help them grow to a position where they can be of value to the department. So that's why I call this a death spiral, because at its full speed, you're going to wind up that the Sample Volunteer Fire Department certainly has the potential to, and quite possibly, the department dies. So what can we do? So I mentioned this, before. The core is the key, right? So we have to focus on them. And so when we look at focusing on them, what does that look like? Well, we have to focus on the things that the core enjoys about the fire department. And that's going to be different for everybody. Maybe for Michelle, it's responding to calls, and maybe for Stephen, it's going out and doing school visits. Whatever it is, you have to determine what really motivates them. Where do they find enjoyment and value in being a part of the department? They may do these other things that they don't enjoy just because they want to belong to the department, and they want to contribute, and they want the department to prosper. But there's certain things that they really enjoy. So Michelle likes going to calls, but what does that mean? Well, it means she wants to respond when she is needed, but it's not that she doesn't want to respond when she's not needed, right? She doesn't mind showing up for the structure fire, but she doesn't want to go to a fire alarm every night. And so when you identify these things that the core enjoys, the things that they enjoy doing related to the department, and you kind of split them up among the people, among your core, and allow them to do those things, you're really giving them what they want. And one way to find out what that is something called a stay conversation. In the fire service, we've heard about for a while, and I think generally, fire departments are doing better about doing exit surveys. But the exit survey is too late, right? I'm not saying there's not value. There's absolute value to doing exit surveys. But a stay conversation is something you as a leader, you've identified somebody who is a true value to the department, and they're a rock star. And you need to go to them, let them know that. We truly value you. You are exceptional here. We want to keep you. So first off, is everything going okay? And are you in a place where we can keep you here? And second, what is it about this that you like? And we're not just learning it for understanding the motivation of the core, but we're also learning it so that we understand what we might do differently for the other members, right? So we have these stay conversations, and you can look this up. There's books written on it. There's videos on it. But this is a successful way to go to your A team, if you will, your core, and ask them, what works for them, what could we do better, and really get to know them in a way that's meaningful, right? And think about it this way. So you're the chief, you're the captain, whatever leadership role. Maybe you're just a senior person in the department, but you have a leadership role, even if it's formal or informal, and you go to somebody like that. How much is that going to mean to say, hey, can I just sit down and understand? I want to let you know how much you're contributing, but understand, what it is you really enjoy, because I want to make sure we're focused on that. That's huge, and that's going to go a long way with those people. So when you set up these things that the core can focus on, that they enjoy, you're going to, obviously, when membership is low, you need to concentrate on those things. And there's a few other things that go along with, not just with low, but setting yourself up for success. I'm going to lump them all together in this section called What Can We Do? And so really, there's several things here, right? Shifts, unit specific tones or an app. We need to get towards municipal fundraising or funding rather. We need to determine what matters and when to say no. We need to have administrative members. We need to maintain high standards through this. We need to be honest. And probably one of the things that we're going to talk about a lot, or one of the things that might be painful to hear, we have to focus on the mission, we have to focus on the community, but we have to be ready for meaningful change. And so let's talk about each of those a little more in depth. So shifts. I know there's departments out there that use percentages of, you have to make a certain percentage of calls. I will argue with anybody that that the shift system of scheduling or setting minimum expectations for your volunteers is a better system. Now, when I say a better system, somebody's going to say, well, there's a problem with this and problem with that. When you look at systems and processes, it's not about perfect. There is no perfect, right? And so it's about comparing all of them and then picking what's the best for your department. And so there are problems with the shift system of scheduling or of requiring a certain number of shifts compared to requiring a certain percentage of calls. But compared to the percentage system, I think it works better. And I haven't been in, as Chief Buckman said, I've had the fortune to be able to go and visit departments all across the country, and I haven't been persuaded otherwise. So, but let's talk about what that means. You have your members sign up to pull shifts or a hybrid of that, meaning, I'll sign up on Tuesday nights and maybe during the day it's an all call because we just don't have the ability to sign up, whatever that is. Perhaps your minimum standard is you sign up for 1 12-hour shift a week. Maybe it's 2 a month, whatever that is. But that allows so many things. So by having shifts, when you have good coverage and when you don't. And when you don't have good coverage, what happens? You send out a message and the core will usually pick up the idea of that. So you're allowing your people to stay home when the call is not significant. So what do I mean by that? Does your whole department need to turn out for a fire alarm if there's no sign of smoke or flame? And my answer is no. You might be surprised to know, but since 2003, the Las Vegas Fire Department does not go on fire alarms at hotels unless somebody has actually seen smoke or flame. And so I would say for these responses where it's not significant, we're asking them to leave, and then they get there and they're truly not needed. And so you're really frustrating your people, especially the core, because they're going to come out multiple times. They're going to come out. And let's face it, most of these calls can be handled by a single resource staff by 2 trained personnel. So what types of calls am I talking about? And here I'm just talking about a fire department. Now, we have EMS, but and if you run a transport service as well within your fire department, most BLS calls, most calls can be handled with just a 2-person crew, right? But for the fire department side, we're talking about a vehicle accident without entrapment. We're talking about fire alarms. We're talking about medical assists, those types of things. obviously there are times when you need more. And the way you work that is we'll talk about it, but basically when significant calls out, we want everybody to come out. We need everybody, right? And you can set up mechanisms to handle that. But one of the misconceptions about shifts is that just because you have shifts, you have to stay at the station. And I don't mean that at all. Um, Michelle and Stephen, we talked about earlier, can be the shift tonight, and they can still respond from home. When the pager goes off or the app goes off on their phone, just because they're on shift doesn't mean that they wouldn't do if you didn't have shifts, if you did a percentage of calls. It's just that they have agreed and committed to be the two people on shift tonight, or however many people you have. And they have committed to say when the tones go off, I will be at least one of those people that will be there. So what does this do? It allows your members and by extension their family to plan their lives around the fire department. You know, for your core, their families understand. We talked about it. They understand that they're probably going to be at the department at least once a night, and probably one day a week. But knowing beforehand that it's Tuesday night, and that's so much better for them. That's so much easier for their family to digest, for them to accept. When you don't have shifts and you're just basically you're under you whenever the tones go off, whoever is available comes out. That means the family movie night, you know, the night going out to dinner, whatever that is, now that's cut short because the people from the core are probably still going to come out, right? But if they know that, hey, you know, we've got the medical assist coming in for a lift assist, we got two people in the ambulance crew are going to show up. Okay, the crew can handle that. They don't need me, and I'm okay with that. So the way shifts also, when you're in this department death spiral, what that allows also is when you get somebody into the department and they need mentors, they need training, they need have a task book that they have to complete assignments so that they become better trained and more of a value to the department and the community. You can assign them to a strong crew. I know that Michelle and Stephen are on tonight. I know they're great mentors. They know their stuff, and they're going to train this new person well. So now that new person over time becomes a quality, qualified person. And now you can build on another night. You can strengthen another night, and you can strengthen your coverage. And so you just really have more capability when you look at shifts. So along with shifts, we have unit specific tones or an app. If you incorporate with this with your shifts, you just really increased your core's ability to disengage exponentially. And so what do I mean by disengage? All of us need time away from the department. Even Mark, who I talked about, might be up there 4 nights a week, who loves it. You know, all of us love it. We're on this conversation now, and you know, we love the fire department, but even we have a limit to the bandwidth which we can participate in the fire department. And we need to recharge sometimes. We need to step away and recharge. And so the ability to have unit specific tones or an app that'll allow you to do that will allow them to disengage. And so remember how we talked about most of our calls require one resource with 2 trained people, right? So you go to the shift model and you have 2 people staffing each night. So even if you don't have the unit specific tones, even if your members don't have to get up on the go and on the call and go to the station, they still hear that pager. And so they, by extension, their significant other is awakened by those tones. And I'm sure many of you've heard know Tiger Schmittendorf. He's speaks on recruitment and retention, but he calls this the rollover syndrome. And so when they hear those tones, maybe it's for a fire alarm or whatever it is, because they aren't on shift, they squelch the pager, they roll back over and go back to sleep. And maybe even they turn it off. But at some point, what's going to happen is their significant other is going to say, you know, you aren't on duty tonight. Why don't you turn that off so we can sleep through the night for a change, and I'll get a good night's sleep for when I go to work tomorrow, right? Or after the first insignificant call, they turn off the pager. So what happens then? Well, no, we don't need more than that, you know, 2-person crew for the fire alarm, but we do need more people for the structure fire. And now the pager's off and they didn't hear that and they aren't able to respond to that. I don't know about y'all, but when we get a structure fire, it strengthens their family. It strengthens their morale, right? Everything strengthens. And I know when I miss a structure fire, I am ticked. I am not happy, right? And that's the way our Corps is. They want to be there and they do not want to miss that. And so, turning off that pager, missing that important call is what happens. But by setting up unit specific tones, we can adjust to that. So if we set up a tone for the duty shift, right, those 2 people on duty, or however many people works for your department, we can set that up, and then we can set up a tone for a working incident. So if I'm not on duty tonight, I'm at home with my family, and I don't hear the fire alarm. I can turn my pager to where I can if I want to just hear what's going on. I can hear everything and all that. But if I want to be with my family, spend quality time, but I also, if we get a structure fire, if we get a trap, if we get a cardiac arrest, I want to go out and help the community with that second working incident tone. Now that allows me to truly disengage, except when the department truly needs me. So now your members, especially your Corps, can sleep nights when they're not needed, but they're totally notified when they are. So, and we're really understanding about sleep and all that now too. It's not just for the paid side of our departments, right? So the volunteers have issues with sleep, and so we need to take that into account. A lot of people might push back on this next one, and that is municipal funding. So we need to move from a fundraising supported department to a municipal supported department. And that sounds scary to a lot of departments out there. There are still departments that rely on the spaghetti dinner, on the chicken cook-off, whatever that is. Maybe it's a donation letter, but whatever that is, they rely on that to fund their department. Let's be honest, when most people get into the department, they want to run calls. They are there to train, to work together with other team members as a really effective team. And so they will do the fundraising because it allows them to answer those calls, but that's not really what they're there for, right? We need to move away from this internal fundraising system. And I'll be honest, like I said, that can sound scary. It sounded scary for our department 20 years ago, but we did it. And we've gotten to a place now where if we still do a fundraiser, a annual letter twice a year, we still get donations from different sources, but we don't have a day where we spend all day doing cooking and things like that. And it took us 20 years to get here. It probably took us 15 years to get here. But right now, if we never got another dollar from donations or fundraising, we'd still be able to fund the department's operations, right? We might not be able to add the rotor to the new ladder truck, but the calls will get answered in an effective manner. We'll have good equipment, and we'll be effective, right? When we think about this, is your police department, is your public works, is any other local government department funded by donations or fundraisers? And the answer, it's no. So why should our department? That's going to be difficult. But the other side to think about is you are saving your locality a tremendous amount of money by being volunteer. And so we need to help them understand that. We need to educate them on what it is you do. The MVFC has a great calculator that will tell you the value you bring to your department or to your locality by having volunteers. And so we have to start small. Maybe it's, you as the chief or the president of your board, whatever your structure is. Maybe it's one of your top leaders goes and visits the local county administrator or the town manager. And keep this in mind. When I say top leader, there might be somebody, I'm the chief, but there might be somebody in my department who's better situated in the community to go out and reach out to the community. And I'll just share a story. In Fauquier County, the fire chief is smart enough. He has a person whose full-time job is to go to the county, and he presents for a local, one of the largest home builders in Northern Virginia. That's his full-time job. Now, he knows all of the board members in that county. He knows all the players, and he also knows how to present to them and what motivates them. The fire chief just steps back and lets him present. And so, that's brilliant when you think about that. But there might be somebody better than the fire chief, better than the department president. That's maybe they're just a regular member, maybe they're an admin member, whatever it is. But think about who the right messenger is for that. But you need to go to this county administrator, the town manager, whatever that is. Tell them about your concerns. Tell them about the time spent fundraising and how that affects those who answer calls. So tell them about, hey, here's Mark. Mark is going to be up 3 nights a week, and he has to go to work the next morning. But he's also up all day Friday. He took off Friday day to fix Brunswick stew all day, and then he's going to be up till 10 o'clock that night because we're selling it. Tell those stories about the people in your department, okay? And be sure you ask for that. Start small. If this is the first time you're going to your local government, ask for $5,000, ask for $10,000. Maybe you even tie it to a specific item that you're looking for. Hey, we want to buy all new thermal imagers. We want to buy 2 for each of our 3 apparatus. Okay, we want 6, and it's $5,000 a piece. So, right, let's see, do the math, carry the 7, that's $30,000, right? So maybe it's something specific like that, but you have to start small. You have to also start talking to your local politicians and have a relationship with them. We have to be open about our fire department. We have to let them in, and that might be new. That might be a new concept for you and your community, but we have to start having those discussions. When our department is low on membership, and when things aren't going as well as we like, we have to determine what matters, and we have to say no to things that don't. So you're already asking your core to do more than they would when the membership is great, right? They're stepping up to answer more calls. They're doing more administrative work. These are things that they're doing, and you're asking them to do it, and they will do that. But we have to peel away the things that are not really important at this moment. They're not really the core of what our department's mission is. And we can have that argument about what's the core and what's not, but we can't put more on them than their bandwidth will allow, right? So when you're in this state of low membership, you have to focus on what matters. You have to say no to the other stuff. So maybe it's just responding to calls. And so maybe the conversation is, you know what, Principal Skinner, at the school, we won't be able to staff an ambulance at every home football game this year. And I'm sorry for that, but if you call 911, we're going to be there. Or we'll no longer be able to respond to all EMS calls. We won't be toned for them, but we will be able to respond to major traumas, chest pain, cardiac arrest, lift assist, whatever these significant calls are on the medical side. But we're not going to go to every, splinter, every, all of these insignificant calls unless the medic unit calls for us. We're just not going to. We have to have our membership concentrate on the significant calls. And so whatever that is, you need to find out. That's part of finding out where, for the core members, what they enjoy. As I said, you have Michelle that wants to go on calls, right? She wants to go on significant calls. But you also have Stephen that wants to go to the school and deliver the education to the students. Allow those things if you have the members who enjoy these certain things. Maybe you have a couple that enjoy going up to the football game. I'll be honest, my wife and I, that's date night on Friday nights when football season's in, right? My wife and I go up and we staff the ambulance on Friday nights at the football game. And sometimes she says that's the only time she gets to see me. So I have to take advantage of that. So, but make sure that the things that you're saying yes to are things that your core people enjoy. So we also have to find a way to bring in administrative members, right? Just like fundraising, most people don't sign up for the fire department to do administrative work. Most want to join the fire department to run calls, for that excitement, to do things that they don't get to see every day. But let's be clear, there are people in the community who want to help out that don't want to be a firefighter or an EMT. And if you make a membership slot for them, you allow them to become part of your department. So there's a couple of things with that. Oftentimes we say you have to be a firefighter, or you have to be an EMT, or you have to be some operational role. And so what happens is those people in the operational roles often get put in administrative work. Well, asking me to be your webmaster is not a good idea, right? I don't have any background in that. I'm not going to be good at that. And I'm really not going to enjoy it. I'll do it because it'll allow me to go on calls. If you really want me to do it, nobody else will do it. I'll do it, but because it'll allow me to go on calls. But I'm really not going to be that great on it. But imagine if you had a webmaster who, somebody in your community, they don't want to go on calls. They don't want to do the operations, but they do want to do this. They want to help out the department in some kind of way. And this is a meaningful way. They have this skill. They can put it to use. And this is a meaningful way for them to help out. So a lot of departments make mistakes when they bring on administrative members in the sense of they have it so that anybody can come in and just do admin work. You need to be specific about what it is you're looking for. And so don't just have people floating around, oh, I'm an admin member. No, have a webmaster, have an event planner, have a chaplain, have a treasurer, and be very specific about what those roles are. One of the other things is we have to keep our high standards, right? It's easy to sit here and say, you know, we're in a rough time right now. We're just going to bring in anybody we can. And so it's easy we're going to go back to Mark. Mark's our core member, right? And he's going to say, you know, I want to bring in this person, and I want to bring in, let's say I'm tempted to bring in Ray. So Ray has poor values. He can't climb a flight of stairs without getting out of breath, or he doesn't get along with others, or a combination of all those. But you know what? Ray's going to be here Wednesday night. That's one night where I was providing coverage, and it's one night now that I can be at home with my family. We can't allow that to happen, because even though Ray might come in and be a Band-Aid for a short while, somebody like that is going to be a cancer to our department. And it's going to make things worse over the long run. We have to set minimum standards. We have to hold ourselves to those minimum standards. We have to hold our members to those minimum standards. And so you also might be tempted to not hold your members to minimum standards, right? So, you know, Mary didn't pull any shifts last month. She's supposed to pull 4. She's only signed up for 2 shifts this month. But you know what? That's 2 shifts I don't have to pull. I'm not going to say a word to Mary. So you have to still hold them accountable, unfortunately. And we'd love to see that wasn't the case, because nobody loves to have those tough conversations, right? But they need to happen, because what's going to happen? Well, Mark, who's your core member, or other core members, are sitting here thinking, you know, I'm pulling all my shifts. I step up whenever the chief asks, but I'm leaving my family an awful lot because Mary's over there not doing her the minimum. You know what? Next month I'm putting in 3 shifts. The heck with this. And so that becomes, like I said, a cancer to your department, and you can't have that happen. So when I say be honest, what do I mean by be honest? There are many departments out there who are experiencing more poor leadership or poor membership levels that won't admit to this. And some of this is personal, right? If I'm the chief, this is a direct reflection on me. Leadership is the key to everything. And so if something's going wrong in the department, this is a direct reflection on me personally. I've done something wrong, or I've not done enough, and nobody wants that. It's human nature not to want your community to think that. So because of this, chiefs tend to cover up the fact that the department is facing difficulties. But instead, we have to be completely honest. We owe that to the community that supports us. So be honest. When you tell Principal Skinner that you can't provide an ambulance at the football game, tell them why. I'm sorry, sir, but our department relies on volunteers, and at this time we're short on manpower. We're working hard to change that, but that's the reality, right? And so you have to also be honest about your capabilities operationally. You cannot be the FDNY without the FDNY staffing. And we need to realize that. We all want to be aggressive firefighters. We live for that, right? That's who we are. It's part of that identity. But staffing determines tactics, right? It's okay to admit that because your department can only get 2 people in the first 5 minutes, that you're not going to be able to perform all the tasks that your community might see on Chicago Fire. It's okay to admit that the reality is that if we get a fire tonight, you'll probably get 4 people. Maybe 2 are over 65 and are great at pumping the truck, but they can't enter the structure. That's okay. Maybe one of them is 18 and is strong as an ox, but they have no training and won't be able to enter the structure. And maybe one's 30 and has plenty of training and experience, and and could help, but has no other backup. And so they won't be able to interrupt the structure. Be honest about the reality of where your fire department is right now, but explain what you can do, not just what you can't do. So what we will do is we'll attack the fire from the outside until more help arrives. This has scientifically been proven to help increase the survival rate of those traps. And we can also promise that we'll keep the fire from spreading to other buildings. And so when you're in these times of low staffing, you have got to do this. And I know that hurts people to their core. We are all aggressive firefighters, and that's who we want to be. But again, staffing dictates tactics. So you also have to be honest about what your department is capable time-wise. For example, on Tuesdays and Thursdays during the day, I don't know who we're going to have around. We might not have anybody around, but what we've done, I've reached out to the chief next door, and they have a tough time on Friday nights. And we have a lot of people on Friday nights. We're going to help them on Friday nights, and they're going to agree to help us out on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We've already got a mutual aid agreement in place, but I just let them know that Tuesdays and Thursdays are tough for that. So tell your community that you are working to deal with these situations. But also remember, there are things that we can do to make things better. But your department, think of it this way, your department does not determine the level of service you provide. So what do I mean by that? The community determines the level of service because they give you the resources you need to provide it, right? And so if your community won't support your department to do what you need to do, either through funding or either through members who come into the department, your department having enough firefighters with proper modern equipment to fight a room and contents, you might not be able to do so safely. And you have to be honest about that. We as chiefs may say, you know what, from now on, we're going to be able to handle a call that involves 2 tractor trailers carrying 80,000 pounds each, And so, but the reality is, if we don't have the manpower, if we don't have the equipment, if we haven't been given the funding to do those things, or we haven't been given the resources from the community in the terms of recruitment and retention, then we can't do those things. We'll be placing our members in a dangerous situation. And so the other thing you should be honest about is the why. So perhaps your department, your locality is growing, right? And now because of this growth, you have 50% more calls than you did 10 years ago, but you have the same number of operational personnel. That's nothing to be embarrassed about. That is probably the reality for most of this country. The communities are growing. And so that's not a problem with the department. You still have 25 very good operational people that they had 10 years ago. You just got 1,000 more calls on your plate or whatever that is. Tell that to the community and be proud of what you can do with what you have. And lastly, I'll say you need to focus on the mission, focus on the community, and be ready for meaningful change. And so what do I mean by this? So along with being honest, we have to ask for help. This is going to be probably one of the more difficult things that you're going to hear me say today or tonight. And what I mean by that, it might be time to ask for paid staff. I've seen so many departments that focus so much on being volunteer instead of being what's best for the community, that they don't allow themselves open to the idea of paid staff. They put being volunteer first above answering the community's needs. And so even though they've scratched 5 calls this month, they are not going to ask for paid staff because to them, that means they would no longer be volunteers. And I understand the motivation behind this. Some of it ego, and that's the wrong motivation. But sometimes it's motivated by fear of what paid staff means. And let's be honest, integration and transition to a combination department is not always done well. And it oftentimes leads to where it happens and then there's no volunteers a couple of years later. And so perhaps they've seen that in their area or they've heard bad stories of that. And so maybe they've seen where paid staff comes in and there's lots of problems in the way the department is run, the way that they interact with your volunteers, interact with your paid staff. Those are all genuine concerns. But I will tell you this, any department that does not provide the level of service the community demands will eventually become paid. And I would say that it's better to be a stakeholder in the transition to a combination department than to watch it from the outside and have no say. The other thing I'll tell you is there are numerous resources that now exist that can help your department transition successfully, especially you as a volunteer having a say in that transition and being a stakeholder and helping guide that process to where your volunteers are still valued and still play a role in providing public safety. And so I would say there are plenty of resources out there. There needs to be more. I won't say plenty. That's not the right term. There are resources out there that are available to help you make the right transition towards asking for paid staff. So I've kind of hit on quite a few things here. And so I want to allow you to ask some questions, because I find that's where there's so many different ways of doing firefighting across the country. And this allows you to ask some more specific questions. So Chief, are there any questions out there or any you have?
All right, Spencer. Wow. I would say the people on here have got to be impressed with the information that you have provided today. So I will also tell you, we got pretty good cross-section from the country, from New York to Oregon, Montana, Iowa, Virginia. One thing, though, I'm disappointed. This is my second one that my guy from Puerto Rico has missed. So I'm gonna have to go check. He'd been on every one of them, and he's missed two of them in a row. But yeah, Spencer, you used the word bandwidth a while ago. And a couple years ago, I'm listening to some young people talking, I don't have any more bandwidth. I finally said, what do you mean? You don't have high-speed internet at home? It's like, no. So for us older people in this room that maybe you haven't heard that used before, that's what they're talking about. They have no more time.
Sure.
And we used to say we didn't have any more time. But I also liked your death spiral statement because there are lots of departments that are probably in that death spiral and don't recognize that. But when you look at the core and you look at the minimum membership, one of the questions would be is, what do you have to do to try to get that minimum performance person to be in a core? And you just get maybe a couple ideas.
Yeah, I think so. If I understand you right, you've got somebody, maybe they're brand new, maybe they're not quite performing as well as you'd like. I think you've got to find out what motivates them, right? That's the key to pretty much everything. And really, when you talk to people, especially experts on this topic, and Chief Buckman knows, when you talk to Pat Lynch, Chief, but when you talk to people who know this topic, Maslow hierarchy needs is still your basic starting point for motivating people, right? So we've got to find out what motivates them, and then we've got to give them clear expectations, and we've got to give them a clear path on how to get there. So our department has seen great success, and I stole it from other departments. We've seen great success with mentors and task books. And so the task book, they clearly understand what is necessary to get to the next step. And then the mentors are there to hold their hands through that. You have to pick the right people to be mentors, and you have to build a good task book. But if you just look up online, and you can find plenty of those, the harder part is lining them with the right mentor.
Well, I think you gave two great ideas here. One, mentors. That's so important. The other thing is, and it's hard to do because we resist confrontation. And I don't mean what you said. Sit down with them and ask them what motivates them. And that's not confrontational. It's a friendly conversation. It's like, I'd like to help you become more involved. How can I do that? So I think that was very good. Couple very good ideas. I'm looking over here. Let me just make sure there's no questions. I got some in the chat. I got some people made lots of excellent presentations, lots of comments about good ideas. So it's some good feedback there. You mentioned about focusing on your mission. And I just talked to an elected official about probably 2 months ago, because they're transitioning to a combination system. And I said, how are you going to keep the volunteers engaged? And he says, we're going to laser focus on our mission. We're going to stay right on target. We're not going to use a shotgun approach. We know what we need. We know we need the volunteers. We know they have to come to training, so on and so forth. And so it's just easier to do that. And so keep it laser focused is one thing, is because we are distracted in many ways. You know,
Absolutely.
we're pulled. You got a phone call today, and all of a sudden it's an emergency
Yeah.
from that phone call. It's not really an emergency, but we make it emergency. So um, I certainly the Las Vegas comment. Could you say that again? Because I was trying to make a note and I didn't get it down.
Sure. Yeah, so it's my understanding since 2003, Las Vegas does not respond to fire alarms in the hotels unless there is confirmed by the callers smoke or fire.
Well, I will tell you, Spencer. In 2002, I was told that by the Fire Alarm Sprinkler Association, the National Fire Alarm Association, at a meeting. If the fire service would just let us verify by phone before we send the call to the dispatch center, we would reduce your calls by 80%. 2002. And I could not get that bought into by anybody. So I believe you, and I'm going to look into that, because that, and then one of the guys on here made a comment about burning our volunteers out. That's what kills our volunteers, in my opinion,
Yes.
is or where you the cry for smoke thing, and it's a false alarm. So yes. So I do have a question. Does the IFC offer certificate of attendance for these webinars? Yes, they do. It will be emailed to you. Yes, sir. So Spencer, that's really. I don't see any real other questions or comments to share with you, but so let's just start to wrap this thing up. Got to get more comments or more thank yous coming in.
Chief, I do see a couple on the Q&A side.
You think so? Okay.
I see the chat, and then I see the Q&A.
Okay. Yeah, you did. I'm sorry.
Real quick if you want.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I think there's a question about municipal funding, and if the municipal government is maxed out on its funding and taxes. And what I would say to that is the municipal government's job is to determine priorities and then assign resources accordingly. It's no different than a structure fire, right? We have this many priorities, and we or this many tasks that need to be done, and then we have priorities that we receive resources to accomplish those tasks. The municipal government should be thought of in no different way, and public safety should be high on that list. It's hard to understand when you build a new park, but you won't fund the fire department. So the second question was, I understand the need for minimum requirements. What about the idea of developing individual participation plans with members annually to understand what may or may not be happening to impact their level of participation for that coming year? I think that's great. I think I'm going to steal that. That's a great idea, and you can't go wrong. It gives people a clear path to improve and to become a value for the development. Go ahead, Chief.
Well, I was going to say, Spencer, it's just funny. I had this conversation, I'll say probably 3 months ago, with a president of a volunteer fire department. And that was my suggestion, is sit down with each one of the volunteers and say, what can you give me for the next 3 months? And then do this. And he goes, my God, you just gave me a whole new job. I go, well, you're asking the question. Everybody is different. And so, we can be different. I think you made that statement. Don't handle them all the same way. It's not a cookie cutter approach. You got to have different types of different solutions for different people. So,
absolutely. Okay. One of the other questions was for hybrid departments with declining volunteer numbers, what are some tactics that can be used to breathe life back into the volunteer program? I think a key to the combination department is understanding the value that each brings to the department, and understand the reality of the situation. So, and what I mean is, if I have paid staff, they are able to devote a significantly larger number of hours to being a firefighter than I as a volunteer can. And I'm okay with that, right? We're a combination department. My paid staff are all part-time, and they work somewhere else. We work in busy departments. I'm never going to see as many fires as they do, right? And so I'm okay with that. What I need to understand, though, is even if I'm a volunteer, let's say, and I can't be as good as they are, if all I do is concentrate on the task level firefighting. I'm really good at pulling hose. I'm really good at throwing ladders. I'm really good at operating the spreader and the cutter on a vehicle accident. If I concentrate on those things, I still provide a significant value to the department. And then if I'm the chief and I let my people know, and I say, hey, Bob, I know you're riding the back seat and you feel like you're always in the back seat and the paid guy is always the officer or the driver. You can here's the pathway to get there. But let me be clear with you. We wouldn't be able to operate effectively and help bring safety to the community without you in that back seat. We would be so much behind the 8 ball on a fire, on extrication, whatever it is. With you being here, let me tell you, we are just so much more valuable to the community. You have to tell your volunteers that, because they might get the impression that they're not valued because the paid staff is there. And the other side of that is, with paid staff, they're probably going to get the impression that they're not needed. And so it's hard. In my department, we have 2 paid people 24/7. And a lot of times, a volunteer will call and say, hey, do you need me Friday night? I can be up there to drive. I used to say, well, I don't need you. But I shouldn't be telling them that. I had to stop telling them that, because they need to feel needed. The reality is that the units would get out no matter what, right? But yeah, what I need you to do is come up here and drive so that we can have a 3-person crew. That makes us that much more effective, that much more safe. And so I have to be able to explain that. I think there's a question here about normalization of deviance, where people won't exit during an actual fire. I don't quite understand that one. But then what messaging would you use when talking with your local government when asking for more funding, and maybe at the same time explaining why you may not be able to provide the Chicago fire level of service than you did 10 years ago? I think so. Even if your department has fewer volunteers than you did 10 years ago, and even if you're answering fewer calls than you did 10 years ago, the reality is society has changed, right? 30 years ago, you could come onto a department, and probably because society was a little bit different, I know certainly 40 or 50 years ago, the members in our department were pretty much there every night. And let's be honest, the reality of the situation was that their wives were at home raising the kids, and there wasn't an expectation that they would take a huge role in that. And so society has changed, and for the better, let's be honest. And so I think I would concentrate on how across the country volunteerism is down, not just in the fire service, but look at churches, look at the Ruritan Club, whatever it is, you can see that, and explain to them that we need more funding, because I don't want my people to concentrate on fundraising. I want them to concentrate on answering calls, because their volunteer numbers are low. So I think that's a way you can answer that. Hey, Zach, I hope you're doing well.
All right. Great questions. And we certainly do appreciate the audience involvement. We know you're paying attention. I know from watching in the chat set area, lots of comments there. And then, thanks for Spencer for looking at question and answers. I looked at it right before we started and didn't see any, but they all came in there. So with that, we're going to end this webinar. Again, Spencer, thank you very much for coming on here, doing this. I know this is one of your passions, recruitment and retention. I know you've got lots of experience. If you guys should have Spencer's email, and you'll get a link to this in the recorded sessions along with a survey. So we hope you'll fill out the survey for you. We thank all of you for coming, and we have a webinar scheduled for next Tuesday. So we hope to see you again next Tuesday. Take care. Bye-bye.